Hello and welcome back to Consider the Truth. Today I'll be going over Isaiah chapter 2. I got a new camera for my book, and let me know if you like how this presentation goes, if I should keep going this way or if I should make any changes. Also, I've recorded this video twice already, and because of this new camera I've had some technical difficulties which I didn't recognize until later on. So hopefully things work well this time. But I really want to get this out to you. So we'll just jump into it. This is also corresponding with 2 Nephi chapter 12, which before this, in Nephi, you could read in 2 Nephi chapter 10, he goes through some things that kind of lead up to him wanting to present Isaiah chapter 2. And so you might want to go through and read that. I'm just going to read chapter 2. It says, "The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem." So he saw this. This is a vision he's giving. "And it shall come to pass in the last days," which is our days, "when the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it." So here we have some symbolism in the mountain and the house, and then mountains and hills. So mountains could mean several different things in the book of Isaiah. It could mean the temple, it could mean a mountain, it could mean the nations, or it could also mean Zion and the New Jerusalem. So we'll read first Isaiah 13 verse 4, where it's talking about the mountain as being a nation. So Isaiah 13:4 is right here, and it says, "The noise of the multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle." So here he's talking about a huge group of people, a nation, and it could be used in that way. And so when he's talking about how the Lord's house shall be established in the tops of the mountains, it might be talking about America, the top mountain, the tallest mountain, the biggest nation, the most powerful nation in the world is right now the United States. It could refer to the temple being as found in Exodus verse 15, verse 17, which a lot of words that Isaiah uses will have reference to words that were used by Moses, or they're found in the Garden of Eden story, things like that. And so you'll want to have a look out for words like trees and gardens, or dust and breath. We're going to get into those a little bit later too. Also, while we're on the topic, words like path and water and bread, things like that are used in the New Testament, can help give us understanding about what those words might mean. And a lot of times they're talking about Jesus Christ. So in verse 17 it says, "Thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountains of thine inheritance, in the place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established." And so here, plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance. This is talking about the temple. And it could mean a literal mountain. If you read Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 8, he's talking about a literal mountain that will be used. And let's read Doctrine and Covenants 133, 12 through 13. And when I go through my studies, I like to use the modern prophets. I like to see what Joseph Smith said about things, and what the Book of Mormon says about things, and what the New Testament says about these scriptures, and that way we get the best picture. It says in 12 and 13, "Let them therefore who are among the Gentiles flee into Zion, and let them who are of Judah flee into Jerusalem, unto the mountains of the Lord's house." And DNC 49:25 says, "Zion shall flourish upon the hills and rejoice upon the mountains, and shall be assembled together unto the place which I have appointed. And so here we're learning that Zion is also associated with the mountains. And we're going to see Zion and New Jerusalem in section 84, verse 2. And I've read a lot from a BYU professor named Abraham Gileadi. And the first time, several years ago, when I went through the book of Isaiah in depth for the first time, I read a lot from him. However, in his analysis that he gave, he never made reference to teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith, the Doctrine and Covenants, or even the Book of Mormon, which I thought was unusual. And he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, to avoid the prophets, when there's so much about Isaiah from the prophets, is peculiar. And not saying he's wrong, but I would rather listen to the prophets than to a professor. So the prophets disagree with a lot of the things that he teaches and says, and so I'd rather lean on what the prophets are saying. So here's verse 2. It says, Yea, the word of the Lord concerning the church, established in the last days for the restoration of his people, as he has spoken by the mouth of his prophets, and for the gathering of his saints to stand upon Mount Zion, which shall be the city of New Jerusalem. And so some people will say, well, Abraham Gileadi knows more than the prophets do, and maybe he does about certain things, but I'm going to stick close to the prophets, and I think the prophets actually do know quite a bit about these things. So we'll read verse 2 again, now that we understand what the mountains are, and it says, And it shall come to pass in the last days, when the mountain of the Lord's house, so the temple, shall be established in the top of perhaps the literal mountain of the Rocky Mountains, or in the mountain of the nations, America, and it shall be exalted above the hills, or these smaller nations, and all nations shall flow unto it like a river. And Isaiah 66 verse 12 talks about this flowing. 66:12 says, For thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will extend peace to her like a river. So the flow is like peace, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then shall ye suck, ye shall be borne upon her sides, and be dandled upon her knees. And so it's talking about peace and glory as we come unto the temple. Verse 3, And many people shall go and say, Come ye, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, or to the house of the God of Jacob. So this is going to either Zion or the temple, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So these words I circle means that they're in parallel with each other, usually within the same verse or a verse next to it. And so he says that come and he'll teach us of his ways. He'll teach us the way. Jesus Christ is the way. And our covenants are the path or the way back to our Heavenly Father. So he's going to teach us about the covenants in the temple, and we will walk in those covenants or in the paths of Jesus Christ. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And the law here could be the Constitution. It could be the theocracy as we practice a new form of government. It'll come from Jesus Christ. The laws are also, there's laws that we learned about in the temple. So it could be those. It could be a new and higher law that we don't even know about. I don't know. Let's see. Isaiah 51 verse 4 just reiterates that this is coming from Jesus Christ. However, there is some commentary. I found this book at my grandpa's house. It says Joseph Smith's Commentary on the Bible, compiled and edited by Kent P. P. Jackson. And it has commentary for chapter 2, verse 2 and 3. And basically, these verses talk about how Zion will fill North and South America, and that New Jerusalem will be in the center of North and South America. And it'll begin when the Nauvoo Temple is built. And let me see if there's a good quote. I'll read this part. It says, I have now a great proclamation for the elders to teach the church hereafter, which is in relation to Zion. The whole of North and South America is Zion. The mountain of the Lord's house is in the center of North and South America. When the house is done, the baptismal font erected and finished, and the worthy are washed, anointed and endowed, and ordained kings and priests, then the elders are to go through all America and build up churches until all Zion is built up. But they are not to commence to do this until the temple is built up here, and the elders endowed. Then go forth and accomplish the work, and build up stakes in all North and South America. So that's today. That's what we're doing. Each stake that you are a part of, or each branch, I guess, but the stakes of Zion, that's what we're doing right now. We're spreading across the world, and specifically across the North and South America. So here's a quote talking about the law and the government, and I'll just read a couple parts from this, because this is my third time to read this. It says, the government of God has always tended to promote peace, unity, harmony, strength, and happiness, while that of man has been productive of confusion, disorder, weakness, and misery. The greatest acts of the mighty men have been to depopulate nations and to overthrow kingdoms. It talks about how governments from men are short-lived glory, their feeble intellect, their ignoble deeds. They all just end up in disaster eventually. Other attempts to promote universal peace and happiness in the human family have proven abortive. Every effort has failed. Every plan and design has fallen to the ground. So we don't want to put our trust in any one political party, of any political party of man, or of any government, of anything that comes out of the government, including how money works or how laws work. Everything is eventually corrupted and will fall apart. It says, the world has had a fair trial for 6,000 years. The Lord will try the 7,000 himself. He whose right it is will possess the kingdom and reign until he has put all things under his feet. All right, so we'll read verse 4, yeah. And it says, and he shall judge among the nations. This is talking of Christ. Christ will judge among the nations. And nations is linked with people here. And he shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come. Come ye, and let us walk. So to come and to walk are similar, they're parallel with each other. And when I think of walking and coming, we're going to come along the covenant path. We're walking with the iron rod. It says, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Yea, come, for ye have all gone astray, every one to his own wicked ways. And so here is talking about we need to come into the covenant path, come into the light, and everyone, all, so it's collectively as a nation and each person as an individual has fallen into apostasy, and we all need to repent and come onto the covenant path. And here, for the light of the Lord, light is used in different ways and can mean different things. Here, light can mean follow the prophet, which has reference to Isaiah 49, verse 6. The light of Christ, which is chapter 60, verse 20. Or light could be talking about the truth, knowledge, and purity as found in the Doctrine and Covenants. Light dispels darkness. and allows us to see, which is a motif that we're going to learn about later on as we see the darkness of the holes in the caves. It says, O house of Jacob, so we're on verse 6 here. It says, Therefore, O Lord, thou hast forsaken thy people. So this is more talk about apostasy. There's no revelation here. Thou hast forsaken thy people, or the house of Jacob. These are the same groups of people. Thy people, the people of the Lord, is the house of Jacob, or the house of Israel, because they replenished from the east. The Lord is in the east. And so they've replaced the Lord. Jesus Christ will come from the east. And they've replaced the Lord with something else. It says, and hearkened unto soothsayers like the Philistines, and they pleased themselves in the children of strangers. And so this is talking about worldliness, idols, false prophets. In chapter 1, we read about how the water, thy wine mixed with water. Here in verse 22, it's talking about the same thing. They mixed with the world. Their land also is full of silver and gold, neither is there any end of their treasures. Their land is also full of horses, neither is there any end of their chariots. So horses and chariots are linked together. That's representing warfare. And silver and gold is talking about treasures and just riches in the land. Not specifically silver and gold, but just wealth in general. And Deuteronomy 17:17 says, Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. So it's our number one priority shouldn't be silver and gold and wealth. Verse 8, their land also is full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands, which we read about in chapter 1, that which their own fingers have made. And the mean man, is the common man, or the, just like a commoner. He boweth not down, he's prideful. And the great man, or the leaders, he humbleth himself not, therefore forgive him not. Oh yeah, this part's part of a prayer of Isaiah. Back here where in verse 6, where it says, Therefore, O Lord, thou hast forsaken thy people. O Lord, this is a prayer. And so he's saying, therefore forgive him not, in his prayer. Verse 10, O ye wicked ones, enter into the rock, and hide ye in the dust, for the fear of the Lord and his majesty shall smite thee. So as we see dust, that goes back to the creation, and it could represent chaos and disorder, and it's the final state of wickedness. It's death. We're going to read in Revelation chapter 6:15, which is when the sixth seal is opened. And it says, And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, so those are just like we read about the common man and the great man, they hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. So this is a good parallel if you're looking for timeline, what's going on. It says, And it shall come to pass, that's another word, so all of this is in the last days. And it says, And it shall come to pass that the lofty looks, or the prideful looks of man, shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of man shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. So here we have being humbled. There's the lofty, those that are high up are brought down. The haughty are bowed down. So that those that are high in society are brought down low. And the Lord, who condescended below all things, the lowest of us all, he will be lifted up and exalted in that day. For the day of the Lord, meaning the last days again, the Lord of hosts, which he's the host of armies, soon cometh upon all nations. yea, upon every one, so this is an individual matter and a national matter, yea, upon the proud and lofty, and upon every one who is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. Yea, and the day of the Lord, that's another way of saying the last days again, the day of the Lord shall come upon all the cedars of Lebanon, for they are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan. So, as we talk about oaks and cedars, these are trees, and in some parts in Isaiah, trees could also refer to the Garden of Eden, such as in chapter 1 in verse 29, it says, "For they shall be ashamed of the oaks which ye have desired." So instead of looking for the tree of life, they've looked for this like common oak tree. "And ye shall be confounded for the gardens that ye have chosen." It's like the Garden of Eden, and they're choosing like something that's much less glorious than the Garden of Eden and the tree of life. But that's not what this is talking about here. In this instance of the cedars and the oak trees is talking about people being lifted up high, just like what we're reading about in the previous verses. "Yea, and the day of the Lord shall come upon the cedars of Lebanon." Oh, we just read that one. Verse 14, "And upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills, and upon all the nations which are lifted up." So here mountains, it could be in parallel with temple over here, which are, could be false religions and false temples, or it could be nations of people that have become haughty and brought themselves up. "And upon every people, and upon every high tower, and upon every fenced wall." So these towers and walls, they're defense institutions or buildings, and so they're trusting in man-made defenses instead of trusting in God. "And upon all the ships of the sea, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all pleasant pictures." So this is all commerce. "And the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day." So that's a parallel of what we just read. What was it? In verse 11, "The Lord alone shall be exalted in that day." So through here, it's probably like a chiasmus, but I haven't broken it down to figure it out. "And the idols shall utterly abolish, and they shall go into the holes," which could represent darkness, "and they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth, for the fear of the Lord shall come upon them." That reminds me of the Garden of Eden again, when Adam and Eve went and hid. They hid themselves, for they feared the Lord. He's coming. And when you're relying upon yourself and not the Lord, that's what you do. It says, "They shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth, for the fear of the Lord shall come upon them, and the glory of his majesty shall smite them when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth." And there's lots of different references to a great earthquake in the last days, and perhaps this is what that's talking about. "And in that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which he hath made for himself, to worship, to the moles and to the bats, and into the darkness, to go into the clefts of the rocks, and into the tops of the ragged rocks. For the fear of the Lord shall come upon them, and the majesty of the Lord shall smite them, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of?" So breath in the nostrils of man, that also goes back to the Garden of Eden, where man can't breathe without God. God put the breath of life into man, and if we're trusting in man rather than God, our trust is in the wrong spot. So that is the end of chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like or a thumbs up or whatever, and leave comments about things that you noticed or different ideas and interpretations that you might have. I'd really like to read those. Thanks, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.